Hola, my penguinos. Welcome back. Even though, like, nobody's probably ever gonna watch this. I think I got, like, a whopping 3-4 views of my other video. Oh, yeah, rocking it. But anyway, today I figured I would talk about what I think my main cause for my anxiety to become so extreme as like it has been. Like, because I think I've struggled my whole life with anxiety. I just, one, didn't know what it was, and two, yes, I know my nails are jacked up, and two, I was able to mask it better, and I was just kind of like, okay, this is stupid, quit thinking like this, you're fine, get over it, you know? But 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago, is when it majorly like blew up to where it's at now. And so I figured I would talk about that today, because I'm not one that talks about stuff. Like, I always just keep my emotions and everything, like, bottled inside. Like, my husband hates it because I just kind of, like, brush everything off and everything. But I think it's because, like, I'm just not used to talking about what's bothering me or anything at all. Like, I don't know. I don't know. That's just how I am. So here we go. So, almost 3 years ago, it'd be 3 years ago this summer, my lovely, beautiful daughter, Natalia, was born. No big deal. Well, you know, it's a big deal. It's a baby. We've tried for many, many years and have had 2 miscarriages, and then finally this one went through and we were able to have a baby. Granted, I didn't have her naturally like I wanted to. I had my son naturally, so I figured I'd have her naturally, but that didn't happen. She was being stubborn and wouldn't drop down into my pelvis, and then her heart rate started to drop and everything, and after them trying to push and manipulate her down so I could give birth naturally, they deemed it too risky because her heart rate just would drop and drop and drop and drop. So I had a C-section. No big deal. I mean, women have them all the time. My sister has had 3. And everything, and that was like pure bliss there, you know, bringing my daughter into the world and everything. And when I finally came home from the hospital from her, of course, you know, when you have a C-section, you're not supposed to lift anything heavier than the baby, and stuff like that. The day that I was able to come home from the hospital, ironically, was the day of my son's preschool graduation. So I was ecstatic because I didn't think I was going to be able to make it, but I was. The next day after his preschool graduation, he got what we thought was the stomach flu. No big deal. He was complaining about pain in his leg, like his knee hurt and everything, but I thought maybe it was just because he had the stomach flu and he had been laying down all day, and he mainly had been laying on that side, so I thought maybe that's why his knee hurt. Well, when he got over his stomach flu, he was still saying, my knee, my knee, my knee, that next day, and I was like, buddy, I think you're okay, I think you're okay. And we thought maybe it was just like attention-wise. I mean, he went 5 years as an only child, and then all of a sudden, well, we had a kid and another baby, and, you know, a lot of our attention was on her because she was a newborn. Well, we ended up taking him to the ER because he woke up that next morning And his knee was like the size of a baseball. And his elbow was swelling. It wasn't as bad as his knee, but it was still swelling, and it hurt to move. So we rushed him to the ER, and of course they thought the worst, which isn't true, because we couldn't explain what happened to him. We were like, we don't know. Like, he had the stomach flu, and then bam, this happened. Like, we had no idea what was going on. And they ran x-rays, and of course nothing was broken. But his blood work came back off, and then he started to break out in this weird rash on his ankle, and it was spreading up, and they didn't know what was wrong with him. Mind you, my daughter is 6 days old. Okay, I'm breastfeeding her at the time, and I'm freaking out because they don't know what's wrong with him. Our hospital that we took him by ambulance to a children's hospital, where they found out that he had H.S.P, I don't know, it's German, and I don't know German. I'm not even gonna, I don't know. But in short, it's called H.S.P. And what it is it causes your blood vessels and joints in your body to swell. So that's what was happening with him. And they told us, ibuprofen. Well, not so much ibuprofen. They gave us a prescription for like a strong thing to help with the swelling, for it to go down. He was in the hospital for like 4 days. So we go home. We get, discharged from the children's hospital. And we go home, and my husband ended up taking me and the 2 kids to my mom's house, which is in a completely different state. It's like 2.5, 3 hours from our home, because me just having a C-section, I couldn't lift him up. And where his knees were swelling, he couldn't walk very well, let alone climb upstairs. And we live in an upstairs apartment, and he needed help on the toilet. Like, I had to lift him up on the toilet, and I couldn't do that. So we went and stayed with my mom for about 4 days, enough to where he was able to maneuver to the point to where I didn't have to lift him up all the time. And everything, when we come back home, everything's going great. Like, I was like, sign of relief. Whew. That lasted 2 days. 2 days. He woke up and that day, and he just didn't feel good, and I was like, buddy, what's wrong? And I thought maybe it was the medication he was on, and stuff, and he's like, I don't know, Mom, I just don't feel good, Mommy. And I was like, okay. He laid in bed most of the day, and I brought the video monitor that I had for the baby, and I put it in his room so I can keep an eye on him, and as the day progressed, his breathing got a little weird, and I thought maybe, it's allergy season, maybe he's getting allergies and he's just getting a little stuffy, Within an hour, it sounded like he just had, like, not even a bad stuffy nose, just like a little stuffy nose, to him wheezing and turning like a grayish blue color because he couldn't breathe. So we threw our daughter, we didn't throw her, but we put her in her car seat. And I grabbed her car seat, my husband picked him up and put him in the car, and we rushed to the hospital. Mind you, I just had a baby cut open out of me 2 weeks prior, like not even 2 weeks prior. It was probably 10, 11 days before this. When we get into the ER, I literally grabbed him out of his car seat, picked him up, and ran him into the ER, because at this point he was blue. he was still breathing, but it was so shallow. As soon as I ran him into the ER, the nurse there, he literally just took a glimpse at him, dropped everything that was in his hands, grabbed him from my arms, and ran him back. I ran after him, and they ended up having to intubate him and take him by helicopter back to the children's hospital. I am freaking out because they're not sure what's going on with him at this point. The children's hospital that they took him to is 2.5 hours from our home. So the flight team that took him, U of M, like, I praise them, because the people there, they literally saw how horrid I was. Like, not so much horrid, but how crazy I was, because my hormones are going all over the place. You know, I just had a baby. They saw how little she was. They knew that I was just, They took down my phone number, called me mid-flight to give me an update on him, called me when they got him to the hospital, and then called me again to let me know that he was in a room, what room number he was in, and that he's doing okay and that he's stable, because it was a long ride there. I get there, and it was just a blur. The whole ER visit, I'm pretty sure we were at the ER for like an hour and a half, 2 hours before they actually took him by helicopter. I don't remember any of it. It's just a big blur to me. When we got to the hospital, they weren't sure exactly what was causing, you know, him to have these issues. So, that next morning, of course, it was like in the middle of the night when we came. That next morning, they did more tests, and they called specialists after specialists after specialists, and they found out that his H.S.P. Caused it to where his lungs completely filled up with blood, because it's inflammation in the small blood vessels, and it happened to the blood vessels in his lungs. And when they swelled up, it released blood into his lungs, which filled them up to the point where he had no airway at all. They weren't sure he was going to make it at all, because when he was on his breathing machine, his blood oxygen level was so toxic that they were thinking about hooking him up and taking out all of his blood from his body, running it through some machine, and putting it back in. It was just awful. Like, that whole time period there he was intubated for about 3.5, 4 weeks. And I got maybe, like, this is no joke, I got maybe 6 hours of sleep that entire 4.5 weeks that I was there. I ate 3 times. I stopped producing breast milk because I was pumping and pumping and pumping. But where I was so stressed and I wasn't eating, like, there was nothing. So, we had to switch my daughter to formula, which isn't that big of a deal. Which was kind of a lot easier at that moment, because my amazing sister, who had just had a baby 6 months before this had happened, took my daughter and let her stay with her while I stayed with my son, because we didn't know if he was gonna make it. Like, they were out of options for him. Like, they had no other thing left to do for him, and he just kept declining and declining. Between feeling guilty because I was with him and not with her, and then when I would go spend time with her and be with my daughter, I felt guilty because I wasn't with him. It was an ongoing battle in my head. My dad and my over 80-year-old grandma made the trip. 4.5, 5-hour drive up to see him in the pediatric ICU. My dad gave my grandma a rosary. We're Catholic. Well, I grew up Catholic. My husband's not Catholic, but I grew up, being Catholic and everything. And, my dad had a rosary that he gave to my grandma. And that morning, he told her that he had to get it blessed by the father at the church. And she did. And they brought it back. And I was able to put the rosary on him within 10 minutes. He had made a complete turnaround. He was going down the drain to the point to where now there was some light in the darkness with him. Like, he was, improving. His blood oxygen level went back to normal. They were able to hear some clearing in his lungs. His blood pressure, it was way, way high, but it was coming down a little bit, and finally, the doctors was like, he's doing better. I think he's going to be okay. And it was a sign of relief. When I think it was literally 2 days later, we were able to take the tube out, and he was able to breathe on his own, and everything, and he had to go through withdrawals from sedation medication and everything. He had to learn literally how to walk again because he couldn't bear weight on his legs. He had to learn to swallow and eat and all that stuff over and brush his teeth, because he was sedated for so long that his muscles, I don't know how that works, but he had to go through all that. And when we were finally able to take him home, after about a week and a half, I was able to wrap my head around everything that had happened, and that right there is the pinpoint of my whole anxiety issue, because I catch myself and I will wake up 40, 50 times in the middle of the night and go in and check on both of my kids to make sure they are breathing. I have my baby monitor in there, video monitor, and I can literally see them breathing, their chest moving. I can hear them. That's how sensitive the sound is on this monitor. But in my mind, I'm like, no, I gotta see this. I have to go in and see it. And so even after 3 years, it still makes my anxiety, my anxiety is still awful, awful, awful. But I am slowly starting to, I don't want to say deal with it, but I'm slowly starting to not let it take over my life, because it was taking over my life to the point to where I wouldn't leave my house. I would have full blown on hyperventilating panic and anxiety attacks every time my child went to school until he came home. Um, and I think a lot of this is the reason why my kids don't stay the night anywhere. One night a year, when my husband's job has their annual kickoff party at the beginning of the year, is the only night that I will let my kids stay with somebody else besides me, because I can't do it. A million gajillion zillion things run through my head about what could happen to them or what's going on with them because they're not with me. And it's so crazy. And people tell me all the time, you need a break, you need to go out, and you need to do this. And I'm like, I know I do. It would be so amazing if I could, but I can't. So, but slowly but surely, I'm getting there, because I've went to the doctor over this, and it's not just a quick, easy fix. Let's give you a pill and it works. No. The medication they've given me does absolute squat for me. So right now, the only thing that has been helping me is CBD gummies and CBD vape oil. It's not a magic cure fix. It doesn't help all the time, but it helps more than anything else has helped me. So I'm hoping that since it helps a little bit, it will slowly, I don't know, help more, I guess. I don't know. And also, I think talking about it more and talking about everything that goes on in my messed up mind of mine will also help with it too. And I need to work on that, because I don't talk to anybody. So yeah, I know this is a long video, and I know, like, probably this many people will view it, but in my mind, this is my way of getting stuff off of my chest to help me on my journey, I guess. So until next time, guys.